Welcome to Code with Miracle channel. Today we are going to learn rock paper scissors game. How many of you played this game in your childhood? How did you call this game? Rock paper scissors or stone paper scissors? I used to call this game as stone paper scissors. The reason I made this video is to revise all previous topic which we learned in this series, starting from how to define variable, how to use conditional statements like if, else if, then how to use looping statements such as for, while. All this thing we are going to revise in this video. Now let's get started. We all know how to play rock paper scissors game, but still let's revise. If player 1 use rock and player 2 use scissor, then rock will win. If player 1 use scissor and player 2 use paper, then scissor will win. If player 1 uses paper and player 2 uses rock, then paper will win. And this is the small diagram which states like how this game works. The one which I explained in the table is the same which been demonstrated using this diagram. Here you can see rock can beat scissors. This is that example. And if both player uses the same weapon called rock or paper or scissor, then the game would end at tie. So after knowing this game, now we can conclude that the outcome of that game would be three things. One is win, loss, or tie. And the choices are three: rock, scissor, and paper. Now we made a revision. Is this enough to go and start implementing this game in Python? The answer is no, because here we just covered positive scenarios. Positive scenarios in the sense like here we just taken the valid input. We can also have invalid inputs in the program, like user may not give proper input. Here in our game, we are going to consider rock as R, scissor as S, paper as P. The user may give rock with a small r. On that case, it is our responsibility to change it to uppercase and continue the game. And there exists a scenario like user may also give invalid input. On that case, we need to handle and give them chance again to provide a valid input that I have listed down in this table. Here you can see. So I guess we are good now and we can start implementing the game in Python. Here you can see we have a checklist that we need to complete in this video. The first checklist says create weapon list. I'm going to switch into VS Code, then I'm going to type weapons. What this weapons list will have? Weapons list will have R, P, and S, which stands for rock, paper, and scissor. I'm going to type that. First, I'm going to create variable weapons. I'm going to create a list, and the first index will have R, second index will have P, third index will have S. So the first task is completed. I'm going to mark this as done. Now let's move into next task is to get weapon from user, change to uppercase, validate weapon, and retry. Now let's try to switch to VS Code. Here I'm going to create user underscore weapon variable. Then I'm going to use input built-in function because we're going to get the input from user in runtime. Here I also provided the detailed information like R is for rock, P is for paper, and S is for scissors. Then here what we need to do is we need to change this to uppercase. There's possibility that user can provide the data in lowercase, so we need to change it to uppercase. So 50% of the task is done. Then what else we have here? Validate weapon and retake. Now let's move into validating the weapon. Validating in the sense like user can provide invalid weapon, that they can provide any other characters. So that also we need to take care. So I'm going to use if condition. If, then I'm going to write user weapon, user weapon, not in weapon. So I'm going to use not, then I'm going to use in. Here basically we are trying to check the user provided data is not there on weapons. If not there, then obviously we need to let user know that they have provided the invalid input. So I'm going to use print, then I'm going to write invalid weapon. I'm going to type in, let me try to control plus Z. Here I'm going to type invalid weapon. Is this enough, like just typing invalid weapon to the user? Like still they will be confused, right? Like if the input provided by me is invalid, then what all the valid weapon list? So we also need to write this information again, like valid space weapon, weapon, valid weapon r or p and yes. Okay, so this is done. Then what else we need to do? We have let the user know that they have provided an invalid data. Then they need to try this again, like they need to provide the data again. So what we need to do here is we need to use a while loop here. Here I'm going to pass true. If you run this code here, like after adding this while true, then this statements, it will try to run infinitely, because here we don't have condition to break out of this loop. When this condition will get break, if user provide a valid data, then we have to come out of this loop, because if they provided a valid data, then we need to process it. Obviously we need to compare this data with the computer provided data. So I'm going to write break here. So the second task is also completed successfully. So let's try to mark this as done. Let's move into third task. Select random weapon for computer. So I'm going to switch to VS Code now. Here I'm going to use random module. So I need to import. I'm going to hit enter. Here I'm going to import random module. So I need to use import. Then I need to use random, which is a module in Python. Let's try to write our code. Here I'm going to call this as let's try to call this as I'm going to call this as computer weapon. So I'm going to type computer underscore weapon. Then I'm going to use this random module. Random module provide us an function which is called as choice. I'm going to use that function. Basically this choice function takes iterables, which is a list, tuples. Here we can also pass dictionary keys. I'm going to pass this list, Now let's try to print the weapons. I'm going to use this print statement there. Let me try to do Control Z. I've lost the cursor. The cursor should be after print. Let me try to clear this unwanted words. Here I'm going to type user weapon. So first I'm going to print user weapon. Then I'm going to print computer weapon. Let me try to do Control Z. I'm going to use computer weapon. So I just need to type COM. Here you can see it is providing suggestion. I'm going to use this one. That's it. Now let's try to run our code. Let's try to see the output. It is asking us to enter the weapon. I'm going to enter the invalid weapon. I'm going to enter A. Going to enter A. Here you can see it is saying that it is an invalid weapon. So our code is working fine. I'm going to use small r. That should consider it as capital R. Here you can see it is printing capital R and capital P. That is user weapon is rock and computer weapon is paper. Now let's try to switch into sheet. Here you can see the third task is also done. So we have completed 3 tasks. We just have 4 tasks to go. Now let's try to switch into the first sheet. Here in the bottom we mentioned some negative scenarios that also we need to handle. Just now we cross verified our code. It is working fine, like changing the lowercase to uppercase. Okay, and here we also need to process the data, but I've just added like change to lowercase to uppercase, which is fine now. And if the user provided invalid data, then we need to retry. That is also working fine, so we can mark this as done. So we have completed this negative test case. I'm going to mark this as completed. Why it is not marking? Yeah, it's done. Let's try to switch to second sheet. Now we are going to implement game rules. Let me switch to VS Code. Here I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call that function as process underscore game. Let's type the function name, and this function will take 2 parameters, and the parameters are user underscore weapon and computer underscore weapon. So I'm going to type user underscore weapon. This would be our first parameter. Then the second parameter would be computer weapon. We try to clear this. Okay, now let's type second parameter, which would be computer underscore weapon. So once we got this 2 parameter, what we are going to do, first we are going to print the weapon in the terminal. So I'm going to use print statement, which will have your weapon, will have user weapon. Then we are going to type versus computer weapon, then computer weapon. Then here we are going to write some rules. First we are going to write if user weapon. So we are going to type user weapon equal to computer weapon. If this weapon gets matched, what we need to do is we need to return -1. We are going to return -1. Let's try to return 0 instead of -1. Let's try to return 0, because for tie we will return 0, for the win case we will return 1, and for the loss we will return -1. So if user weapon and computer weapon is same, then we will return 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another if condition. Here I'm going to write if user weapon equal to, I don't need this one, I need user weapon variable. So let's try to enter. Okay, if user weapon is equal to rock, then when the user will get win. If user has used rock weapon, then computer should use scissor, then only user will win this game. So let's try to add a if condition here. Here I'm going to open the braces. Here I'm going to mention computer weapon. I'm going to type computer weapon equal to scissor. If this scenario happen, on that case we will return 1. Here we are returning 1 only when user wins the game, or else we will return -1. -1 indicates, let me try to use control Z. I don't want yeah, let's try to use tab here. Okay, now let's type else. I'm going to type else block. In else block I'm going to return -1. -1 indicates that user has lost the game. So I'm going to type return. Sorry, my cursor went on the wrong place. It has to be here, return. Okay, I'm going to type -1. Okay, let's try to copy this block and I'm going to paste this twice. Let's try to paste here, then let's try to give and enter, then we will paste. Okay, I'm going to paste this again. So basically user has 3 choices. They can give rock, they can give scissor, they can give paper. So let's try to use scissor here, and here we are going to use it as paper. Okay, so if user provides scissor and computer provides some output, when the user will win? Only when the computer provided paper. Like if user uses scissor and computer has used paper, on that case we can consider that user has won the game. Similarly, if user uses paper as a weapon, then computer needs to use the weapon as rock. On that case only user can win the game. So we have successfully completed the rules. Let me try to switch to Google Sheet. Here let's go to game rules and understanding tab. Let's try to cross verify. If player 1 uses rock and player 2 uses scissor, then rock is win the game. So let's try to cross verify by going back to VS Code. Rock scissor, and user, if user won the game, then we are returning it as 1. So this scenario is covered. So I marked it, and we also covered this tie case. So I'm going to mark this as done. Now let's move into other case. If user uses scissor and the computer uses paper, on that case scissor should win the game. Let me try to switch to VS Code, scissor and paper. On that case user has won the game, so it is also working fine. Then the last case is if user uses paper and computer should use rock, then only user can won the game. So this also we have implemented in the code, so I'm going to mark it as done. This also we have implemented. This we implemented in else block. Okay, this is done. Then what else we have? On the bottom we have some negative scenarios that also we have covered, so I'm going to mark this as done. So we have completed all these things in this sheet. Now let's move into second sheet. We have implemented the game rules, so this is done. Now we need to decide the winner. So let's try to switch to VS Code. To decide the winner, you need to store this return value. I'm going to call the return value as result. So I'm going to create a result variable. Then I'm going to use equal to. Here I'm going to call the process underscore game function which we created, which takes two arguments. The first argument would be user weapon and second argument is computer weapon. Let's try to pass those things. Okay, successfully passed. Now let's try to write the logic to decide the winner. I'm going to use if condition. If result, if our result is equal to 1, on that case we can consider that our user has won the game. So I'm going to remove this e which I've wrongly typed. Okay, let's try to write some message in the screen. So I'm going to use print statement. I'm going to write here something like you won the game. I'm going to write like this, you won the game. Okay, so one case is done. We have two more cases. I'm going to then use elif. In elif, what I'm going to do is if result, I'm going to write if result, else if result is equal to -1. As per our code, if we get the result as -1, we can consider it as the game being won by computer. So I'm going to write you lose the game. So I'm going to type like this, you lose the game. Okay, so what else we have? We have a case where both user and computer used same weapon. On that case, what we need to do is again we are going to print some message in the terminal. This time we are going to print game type. We're just going to provide this information. Okay, let's try to run our code to verify that the code which we written is working fine or not. Okay, it is asking us to enter the input. I'm going to enter the input here. I'm going to provide rock, your weapon is rock, and computer weapon is scissor. You have won the game, so it's working fine. Let's try again. This time I'm going to provide scissor as my input. Here I provided scissor, but computer weapon was rock, so we've lost the game. It is also working fine. Let's try to provide paper this time. Okay, this time also we lost the game. Let's try to provide scissor. I'm trying this again to cross verify that game tie is working fine or not. Here you can see it is working fine. If both user uses same weapon, on that case we are getting game tie. So this one is done. Now let's try to switch to Google Sheet. Here I'm going to mark the fifth task as done. We have decided the winner. Now let's try to use emojis. I'm going to use emojis rock instead of RPS, which we are trying to display in the screen. Let me try to show where I want to display the emojis. I want to display here on this statement, your weapon versus computer weapon. Okay, let's try to open my emoji.txt file where I add those emojis. I'm going to copy this, then I'm going to switch to rps underscore game.py file. Then I'm going to move to the top. Here I'm going to hit enter. Here I'm going to use weapons dict. Basically Instead of list, we are going to use ticked on some places. So let's try to paste the code which we copied from emoji.txt file. Okay, we have copied it. Let's try to hit enter so that things would look visible to the user, and it will be much more readable if you provide spaces so that we can understand the code easily. Okay, this is done. Where I want to use this dictionary, I want to use here. So I'm going to copy this weapon stick. I'm going to copy one. Then I'm going to paste here. I've copied the wrong statement. No problem. Let's try to type it. I'm going to type weapons underscore dict. Okay, successfully typed it. Then I'm going to pass this user weapon so that when we call this, it will try to get the value from the dictionary, get the value for the particular key. If I provide R, then it will return me the R rock emoji. I'm going to do the same for computer weapon. So I've written weapons underscore dict. I need to wrap this with square bracket. I'm going to run my code again. Let's try to run our code again. Okay, let's try to provide R this time. Yes, you can see the console. Now it has printed the emoji instead of the letters. Here we just need a space because it looks little weird to me. So, okay, let's try to close the terminal and add a space here. So I think this will look clean now. Let's try to run this again. This time I'm going to provide P, so paper. So here you can see it looks good. Okay, let's try to switch to Google Sheet. Here I'm going to mark this task as done. We just have one task which is pending, implementing sets for the game. Let's switch to VS Code. Here I'm going to get sets like input sets input from the user where we can place this thing. Okay, let's place here on line number 34. I'm going to call as sets. Let's try to type sets. Then I'm going to get this sets from the user. So I'm going to use input built-in function. I'm going to pass this message to the user, enter number of sets. I'm going to type enter number of sets. Basically this input built-in function will return you the strings. So even if user given the input in integer, like if they provided the number 2, then it will convert this to string and will store string data to sets variable. So what we need to do here is we need to typecast. We need to change this to integer. Then only we can use this in our for loop. So I'm going to use this sets in for in range loop. I don't want to use the variable. So I'm going to use underscore and I'm going to specify for in, then I'm going to specify range. My range will start from 1 and it will gets end on the particular number which user provided. If they provided 2, then it has to iterate 2 times. So we need to add, sorry, I have to do control Z here to retrieve the lost data. Okay, I'm going to type 1 here. I want to start with 1, so 1 comma. Then I want to end, so I'm going to use this sets variable. which will have +1. Okay, then let's try to type colon. Then what we need to do is we need to move this block inside for loop. So what we need to do is let's try to type cursor. Let's try to place the cursor, then try to use tab so that it will move and provide indentation to us. Then we need to move this while block. So okay, this is done. We got the set. What else we need to do? If you implement sets, then we can find like total number of wins, total number of loses, total number of ties. So let's try to store those information on this variable wins. Then I'm going to type loses. Then I'm going to type ties. I want to set some default value for this. Let's try to use 0 so that if we never won the game, like never won any set in the game, then it will show 0, which would act as a default value. So okay, this is done. What else we need to do? Here we need to increment, like whenever we know like user has won the game. In that case, what we need to do is we need to increment this wins variable by 1. So wins plus equal to 1. Then I'm going to increase this loses. Let's try to enter. Then I'm going to add equal to 1. Then what else we have? We have ties. So I'm going to type ties equal to, sorry, plus equal to 1. So okay, this is done. What else we have? We need to print the results in the terminal. So what we need to do is we need to use all this wins, loses, ties variables values, and then we need to display this in the terminal. So I've already written the code. I'm going to do paste. Here you can see I've used star. So first print star, then I've used a star 10. What we'll do is try to print star 10 times. Then I'm going to print once. Let's try to change it to wins. Okay, then I'm going to print loses, then ties. Let's try to run our code to see in action. It should work fine. So let's try to clear the previous ones. Sorry, what I did, I have typed a L here, so that's why it was showing. Okay, let's try to switch. I'm going to clear this. Why it's not clearing? Let's try to use clear. Clear command is used to clear the terminal screen. Okay, it has been cleared. Let's try to run our code again. This time name L is not defined. Okay, where did we provided L? I think on the first line. Sorry, it was some typo error. Don't know why it is happening. Let me try to clear and save the file. I'm going to run this again. Okay, I want 4 sets. Okay, then I want to use rock on this set. We have won the game. Let's try to use rock again and see. This time we've lost the game. Let's try to use paper. This time the game got tied. Last I'm going to use stone. Here you can see the game last set got tied, and we have won one game, sorry, one set. We have lost one set, and 2 set got tied, so it is working fine. Thanks for watching. If you have not subscribed this channel, please subscribe. Before that, let me try to switch to Google Sheet just to cross verify that whether we completed all the checklist or not. Create weapon list done. Get weapon from user, change to uppercase, validate weapon and retry. It's also done. Select random weapon done. Implement game rules, decide winner, use emojis, implement sets. It's also done. We've also applied implemented rules, this rules in our game. This is also working fine. So I think we are good. Once again, thanks for watching.